Hello, and welcome to Socially Holistic Podcast. Socially Holistic helps coaches and holistic entrepreneurs and women in heart-centered businesses make sense of social media so they can build their own online network and get more clients. As a heart-centered business owner, you do amazing work. Holly's mission in life is to help you help more people. Help us help more women in business with a 5-star review of this podcast. Please leave one today over at iTunes. The more women who find out about this podcast, the more heart-centered businesses will be successful. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the Socially Holistic Podcast, episode 75. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm here with today's special guest, Farideh Ceaser. Farideh is a musician turned launch strategist. After 15 years on the road touring as a musician, Farideh switched gears and now helps entrepreneurs launch their big ideas and online courses. Welcome, Farideh.
Hey, thank you so much. Congratulations on number 75. That's huge.
Thank you.
Like, wow, she was doing podcasts before podcasts were huge. Awesome.
I love my podcast. It's one of my favorite parts of my business. So
yeah,
excited
that's
to be
amazing.
Here.
Well, and you can tell. That's why it's such a great podcast.
Oh, thank you. So tell us a little bit about your background. I love how you switched from such a creative thing, that is music, to something that's very, very business focused. How did that happen?
Well, I was a musician, as like you said in the intro, for 15 years. I mean, you could almost say my whole life because my dad was a musician, so I very much grew up with that lifestyle and that life. And I recorded albums and I toured the world and I just built an audience, all those kinds of things. Being a musician is no different than any other business other than the fact that nobody really wants to buy music because it's free. So that's a challenge. But I'd always been looking for that something else, but I could never find it. Like I'd pray about it or seek into my intuition, those kinds of things. And I didn't know what else I could do until I'd actually seen some people online have businesses that were still them. I thought people ask, well, okay, here's the journey. People will say, start a business about what people ask you about already, because usually that's a sign. And I thought, well, people ask me a lot about my marketing, how I build my audience, how I write the marketing plans I did as a musician. But I thought that if I started a business, I'd have to be, wearing a blazer and be very bland and boring. And it wasn't until I started seeing, in some Google searches, some people online who ran businesses with personality, then I thought, oh my goodness, I could actually be myself and, do what I love. And I've always loved marketing. For me, it's just as creative. In fact, I kind of got to a place where I'd rather write marketing plans than songs. Wow. And so I was like, but you know what? I think people would pay me to write marketing plans. And so that transition, once, I'd always been looking for this thing. And once I figured out that there was a possibility for me, things changed very fast. I was on a tour. I was on a 3-month tour. And when I got this clarity about 1 month in, and so I quit tour. I just canceled the dates, and which was, a true moment of intuition. I'm sure, when I knew in my head, it made absolutely no sense. And in my heart, it was so peaceful. I was like, yeah, go home and start this new life. So I did that. And then, first year of business, I was kind of in just like a vague marketing world, doing whatever people would pay me for until I kind of settled into launch strategist, because that's the perfect alignment with my previous experience, because musicians are always launching. That's, they're launching CDs, they're launching events, they're launching tours, they're launching singles. And also, it's also in alignment with my attention span. I'm not really like a systematic long-term person. I'm the person you come to when you want something creative and bold and a giant push and you want to pass out after. Like, I'm that person. So then after about a year in business, I made that switch, and it's been really great. I love it. It's perfect for me. And there's always something new, and I get to try out all sorts of new marketing. I use my own business as a guinea pig to try out, the latest trends in online marketing and all those things. So I just love it. It's been perfect. It was the right choice for me. Obviously, I still perform. I'm still like holding on. I haven't let go of the dream, Holly. So I still perform with a band called Rosie and the Riveters. So that keeps me busy a lot of weekends. And that's another wonderful reason why I own my own business, so I can still do that. And then I've just started writing really silly business songs on the ukulele for my subscribers for a check.
I like them. Actually, I just sent one to a friend of mine. I sent your SEO song to a friend of mine who does SEO, and she was like, "Oh my God, I love that. I'm sharing it tomorrow."
Oh, good. Yeah, it kind of just came out very in a silly way, and people love them. And I think, hey, if I can make people laugh, that's really good. Because, as an entrepreneur, sometimes it can be very frustrating. So we need to laugh. So
it is. I totally agree with that. It's like, I think sometimes we take our businesses so seriously because, of course, you don't have that paycheck. It all depends on you. The weight of, bringing the money in is on your shoulders. It's all your responsibility. And so we take it really, really seriously. But we can also have fun with it. So I loved it when I came across your songs, and I was just like, oh my God, this is exactly what we need.
Yeah, and I'm doing more of them. I spent the weekend doing some more recording of some new ones, and I think that's part of what I think I reacted to previously, because people who take their business very seriously, and I take my business very seriously, but in general, I'm just a very fun and playful person, and I want to keep that part of me alive. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can be a responsible business owner and also have fun with your business, hopefully. I mean, hopefully we all try to do that.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we started our business.
Exactly. So how does working with people and helping them with launch strategies differ from the kind of launches that you did for your music business? Is it all kind of the same type of structure, or do you find anything different?
Well, the structure is the same. So how you would launch something, the process of bringing it out of your head onto the paper, solving problems, executing, the actual process, whether of any kind of launch, is really the same. My specialty now is online launching, which is really different than in the way of how it's executed than a physical launch. And I guess I really love it because there's some things that we can do with online launches. So online products or the launch, I'm thinking particularly of an online product like a PDF or a course or something like that, like a digital product. You can launch it more than once, which is beautiful, right? Because if you launch a record, it's done. It's done. Exactly. You don't get a chance to, you can't open the doors again and sell more CDs. And so I love that because I noticed with myself when I'd be touring, if I had a new CD, suddenly media would pick me up. I'd just get more exposure. There's kind of a buzz around a launch.
Because it's new news.
Yeah, it's precious. It's precious. And so you can't do it more than once, but you can with a product. And so then you can create that story again and live off that buzz again and use that to build your list and use that to connect more on social media and use that to sell more, which is really, the point. Help more people and sell more at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what would you say are your top tips on how to have a successful online launch?
So my top tips are, first, I guess it's about expectations and mindset. I think launching is a skill set. It's a journey. It's a skill set that you develop over time. One thing I notice with people when they're thinking about launching is that they get so overwhelmed because they start with like, oh, I'm just going to keep it simple. And then it grows and grows and grows. And suddenly, they're hiring like Steven Spielberg's movie set for their 3-part video series. And, and they're like, how am I going to get this all done? And just to keep it small and just to remember that as you launch, your skills in launching grow. The big people online or in any business, the kind of launches that they organize now are very different than what they did at the beginning.
Yeah, not only that, they have a much bigger team now than they had at the beginning.
Absolutely. Exactly. So it's all about having that kind of perspective and that is success in itself. Launching, my top tip is to actually launch. A successful launch is one that is completed. That's the first step, right? Because my first launch online, I think I sold 2 spots, and I was I had bigger dreams, but then when I actually got to launch week, I was like, oh, nobody's going to buy this, and I had 2 people, and to me, I just had to see that as a success, right? And I think that's also part of our mindset as entrepreneurs, is to see somehow change, flip the story so that it's not a failure, but a success, that we actually did it, that we carried through, and that next time it's easier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as long as you sell something, and if you sold nothing, then that would still be a learning experience. So it would still be a success.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Exactly. That's still a learning experience and how you need to tweak. Sometimes we just have to tweak small details, and then the launch in the future is even better. So another tip would be, obviously, you need to have a list, an email list, in order to launch to those people. So you want to have people who come to your website, who join your email list, and that list is growing, so that when you do multiple launches, like say you do one, you learn quite a bit, you sell 5 spots. If you want to resell again in a month or 2 months or 3 months or 4 or whatever, you need to have new people on your list to sell to. You can't just sell to the same 50 or 100 people. So that's a big thing. And then so to grow your list, but also to have an actual connection with your list.
Yes.
So the people who happen to sell the most, it's because they actually have found a way to personally connect with their list, whether it's through a Facebook group or whether it's through very vulnerable blog posts or through 100 one-on-one sessions. There's some way that they've developed an authentic connection, that they've grown so that people trust them, and so that you know what your list actually wants.
Yes.
Which leads me to number 3, which is a successful product is one that people told you that they want.
Yes. And you have a song about that.
Yeah, it's called Sell Something People Want to Buy. And I think that, actually, I really understand this conundrum as from an artist perspective. One of the reasons why I think selling music and selling art is one of the hardest things to sell is that you create it from your inspiration, and then you go out into the world and try and find people who want to buy it. So that's very different than the rest of the world that goes out, has a people, and says, what do you want to buy? And then creates something for them and then sells it back to them.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference. So you might have some people in your audience, and I do too, who are creating products out of their own inspiration, and then they're trying to find an audience, and it's really hard. Whereas if you ask your audience what they want to buy and then use your creativity to solve that problem, it's just a little bit easier. So those are my top tips.
Thank you so much for that last one, especially. I mean, for all of them. But I see so many women online that are, in those private Facebook groups that we all belong to, that are business-based, saying, oh, I'm putting together this new online program. How much do you think I should sell it for? Or some other question, this, and that, and the other. And I always say, have you tried selling it yet? Have you tried asking people? Make sure that people want it. And one of the things that I did with my first online course was I sold it before I created it to make sure that people actually wanted it. And I did. I got, I think, 10 people booked onto my first course. And so that was great. And so it was worth, creating. But I think so many people just launch into creating something that they want to create without knowing that people will actually pay money for it.
Yeah, and that is a beautiful exercise in itself. It's just challenging when you put in a lot of time and money into something, and then it doesn't sell, and then you have to go back and tweak it and such. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. And obviously, still a launch is always a risk, right? You can ask all the right questions and believe you're giving something, and still it doesn't meet your expectations or the like, So. Just be willing to still take a risk, even if you've dotted all your I's.
Yes.
Every launch cart that I open for my clients, we're all like, what's going to happen?
It's exciting because you never know what's going to happen.
Oh yeah, that's part of it. I'm sure. Musicians have a hard time living real lives because they're used to such highs and such lows. So I totally get my highs and my lows off of my clients' launches. How many sales you got today? Those kinds of things. Yeah.
Well, I think business has a lot of highs and lows too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you're first starting out.
Absolutely.
So what would you say are some of the top mistakes that people make? Because in the beginning you mentioned people, wanting to start out small and then growing their launch into this massive monster that just takes over their lives. What other mistakes do you see people making?
Well, yeah, that the other one of, not having a product that people want. They
Right.
haven't tested it.
Mm-hmm.
It's another mistake that I see people make.
What about people not having a plan and just kind of winging the whole launch? Do you ever see people trying to do that?
I don't really, I think,
Or do you
I think people do. And I guess I understand that perspective, because I understand that in some ways that's a way of trying it out small, just kind of winging it. I mean, I don't really view it as a mistake. I view it as a learning opportunity.
How not to go crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Plan it
There's
next time.
an element of just winging it and seeing what happens. And I know that some people that just really works well, and some people not so much. I think the bigger things that people make mistakes are just the emotional parts. So one, they procrastinate so much that they don't launch.
Yeah.
Or they don't follow through. They don't go all the way. That's one of the things I guess I'm really seeing now. Is one of the things I learned as being a musician is the amount of hustle that you need to give to every launch. And so I see people go, 60% of the way or 80% of the way. And then there's the emotions, or what I call the launch monsters, kind of start preying on us. And they start thinking like, oh, I shouldn't take up so much space. Oh, I shouldn't be annoying people on Twitter so much, even though probably only one person saw it.
Exactly.
And so they start like shrinking back into the shadows and not going the whole way, and just being, for instance, for myself, I had this one CD launch and I needed to sell 200 seats. And I literally called up people I know and like drove out to their house and was like, hey, do you want a ticket? I'm outside your house right now. But because I was getting close to the date and all those tickets weren't sold. And I knew that that was the amount of hustle I needed to do. I couldn't be afraid of being annoying. I needed to sell the spots, and that is the reality that we get into in business, right? Sometimes we make a big investment and we just think, okay, I have to hustle. Like, this is going to require me reaching out one-on-one with people. Actually, so that's another thing. Sometimes people forget to make that one-on-one connection with people to invite them into a purchase, right? They kind of think, oh, my email list should be enough. But sometimes taking that personal one-on-one email can make a huge difference. So,
well, and I think it's scary too to make that one-to-one connection, because if you send your thing out, your launch, or whatever it is that you're offering out to your email list, and crickets, then okay, that's kind of sad. But if you're actually reaching out and making one-to-one connections and no one's interested, then that's like, oh my god, they've all rejected me personally.
Yeah.
Like I think it's so much more difficult to handle emotionally when you're doing the one-to-one. I think that's probably why people shy away from it so much.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you know what? I think that's true. That's helpful to remember that people it is hard to be rejected. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's absolutely
It
hard.
is. So how do you work with your clients at all to help them kind of get over the fear of rejection or get in the right emotional place for a launch?
I think, so I firmly believe that when you name it, you can slay it, that just in the act of naming a feeling, that you overcome it. So sometimes these things are just happening in the background and we're not naming it, and we're just moving through our launch instead of being like, oh, I'm totally trying to not take up space. And so when my clients work with me and I'm meeting with them every week and I'm watching their launch and emailing back and forth, and we're still having our little meetings, I can know what's going on, right? I can sense. And so I help them go through it, because I can be like, hey, the other thing is just how normal that is. I think many people are so surprised. All my clients are surprised by the emotional element of the launch, that it is so much more. And that's truly one of the reasons why I love launching, because when people talk about what your why is, or like what is it you were born to do, and I really believe that like what I was born to do is be encouraging. Like, and I can do that whether I'm mute or like blind or old. I can always be encouraging, and that's the emotion. That's why I love launching, because people who are launching need a lot of encouragement, need people to say, "You've got it." Don't shrink back. Go all in. Don't pretend that you're not as amazing as you are, because I know you're amazing. So, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think people totally need to hear that, because sometimes it's just, we're so stuck in our heads as we build our businesses, and it's
exactly. I mean, we all need cheerleaders, right? We all need cheerleaders. And then there's just extra times in our life when we're taking a risk and we're making a leap, of faith and all those things that we just extra needed.
Yes, I agree. So if someone is planning a launch in advance with plenty of time to do it right, the perfect way, if there is such a thing, how long should a launch take, and how far in advance should they start planning this thing?
All right. Well, that's always going to depend on the product.
Mm-hmm.
So when for instance, I'm working on a record right now with my riveters, and we're looking at a 1 year spread because it just takes that long. Like, so for instance, to get into magazines, you need to be in contact with them 6 to 9 months in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So if your clients are looking at books or, those kinds of products, then they need to have that kind of far out. But if it's a digital product, I like to work with my clients 8 to 10 weeks in advance. Not much more, because unless, they have a baby or something in the middle of it.
That shouldn't be too surprising, though.
Yeah, no, exactly. They should see that one coming. But otherwise, not too long, because otherwise those launch monsters can get a hold of you. And also the online world changes so fast.
Yes.
You kind of need to be a little bit more nimble. So that's why 8 to 10 weeks if it's an online product.
Okay, that's great. I really, really like making that distinction between an online product and a kind of a physical or an offline product.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. And this is a plug for my freebie, but if you go to launchyourcourse.com, I have like a 30-day launch plan checklist that kind of gives people an example of what a calendar and a checklist looks like for a normal launch. Mm-hmm. With how many tweets and some big decisions you need to make. So that's another option for people if they need some kind of guidance on what that would look like.
And that is perfect timing, because I was just going to ask you about that. You read my mind.
Oh,
okay.
Excellent.
So when people sign up for this, they get a checklist and a calendar, and then obviously they can kind of adjust that for themselves depending on what their particular launch is like.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And what their clients are like, right? Mm-hmm. So not everybody blogs every week.
Yeah.
Some people blog once a month or twice a month. Mm-hmm. So that needs to be adjusted, or not many. So I really believe, Holly, one of the things I really believe is that, clients will come to me and be like, but I hate Twitter. Like, don't do Twitter.
Exactly.
It's like, I never want to do a webinar. Then we won't do a webinar, I feel like it's so important to protect your passion for what you do, and doing we already have to do a lot of stuff we don't really like our books, cleaning our house, So I try and keep the must-dos to absolute minimum. Mm-hmm. And so I don't believe that there are rules. So that's why when people get this calendar and this thing, if they just straight up cross out anything they don't like.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Or outsource it.
Yeah, or outsource it.
Send it to your VA.
Outsourcing is the best. It's the best. I have an addiction to outsourcing, which I don't think is a problem.
No, I don't think it's a problem either. So you've got two main ways of working with people. You've got your quickie session and your strategy and support. Can you tell us a little bit about those options?
Well, some people want the hand-holding for the whole 10 weeks, and then some people just want to pick my brain, in which case. And then I've also actually just started branching out into some other ones, like where I write your launch emails for you. Ooh. So, yeah, it's been I just keep experimenting with things, and then I put them on sale, and then we'll just see how many people purchase them. And I'm like, okay, people like this product. When I first started doing the launch strategy, I just kind of included just some management. And every client I saw was so overwhelmed with the actual writing of the launch emails, because in an online launch, you're writing usually about 7 emails, and they need to be about, furthering the sales journey. And so I would just start writing them for my clients. And so then after a while, I just put that into my package, because I thought, well, this is what everyone needs. Mm-hmm. It's just so overwhelming. And so that's going to be a new product where people can just hire that, because it's such a big part of people's launch. And, if you're with you, Holly, when you were launching your course and you hadn't made it and you had to create all this stuff before it was launched, and then people purchased, and then you're like, okay, oh gosh, now I have to create the course.
Yeah.
So whatever I can do to make my clients' life easier, I do it. Obviously, I have a team. It's no longer just myself anymore. I have a writer who I outsource to do the writing for my clients.
Oh, good.
And a team to make it happen, because it takes an army to launch.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's why so many people find it overwhelming and just kind of do the absolute minimum, because it's just, there's so much to do, and you don't know what to do, and you don't know how much you should do. And so I think it's really, really helpful to have people like you who can just, hold your hand through it or just give you the information that you need to do each step of the launch, because it can be just such a big monster.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think in some ways that's what people hire me to do. Just tell them what to do so that they have what I actually say is that launching is very non-linear. It's more like a star formation. And so I try and take the tasks and make them linear for my clients, because many people are used to, they get up, they go to work, they do their work, they come home. Like, it's a very linear process, and launching is kind of like 7,000 things going on at the same time, right? Your Twitter's going, your Facebook's going, your email's going, you got 7 webinars going. It's pretty wild. And so I try and create it into a linear structure for my clients.
And I think that's really useful, because I think especially for people who are launching for the first time, it's like, there's all this stuff to do. I want to do it right. And of course, there's no one right way to do a launch, because it's going to change every time. But still, at least if you've got an expert, someone that's done this, 1,000 times before, who's telling you, this is the great starting point for you. From there, you can tweak it for your future launches. But at least that gives you the confidence that, hey, I'm getting all the stuff done that needs to be done.
That's right. And it comes back once again to that launching journey. Like, once once my clients have worked with me, they know exactly what they need to do. So they don't need to hire me for the future launches, because they know how to do it, and it's actually quite easy for them now.
Yeah. And not only that, they know what worked for them the last time. They know what didn't work.
Absolutely.
So you can
and they take it and they tweak it.
Yes. Excellent.
Yeah.
So Farideh, do you have any women business mentors, or are there any women in business who inspire you?
Oh, wow. I've actually been blessed to have quite a few in my life over time. So when I first left high school, I knew I wanted to run my own business. Of course, at that time, I thought it was my own music business. And I had an aunt who was a solo entrepreneur. And actually, I approached her to work for her. And so I worked for her on and off for 3 years, so the next till I was about 21 or 22. And she probably she didn't probably. She made a huge impact in my life, in good ways and bad ways. She had this, I think this encouragement really comes from her. She had this capacity that she taught me that when you think a nice thought about someone, like, hey, nice shoes, nice hair, to say it out loud to that person. And so I'm all, when I notice a woman has mostly it's women. I don't usually dish out compliments to men, because that, you can get in trouble with that. But, if a woman has a nice jacket on, I'm like, wow, I really love your jacket. And I notice that woman just, blooms with excitement. Like, I know, I bought it, So that was huge. But she was, she didn't have much balance in life. So she regularly only got 4 hours of sleep because she was working so hard, or missed meals. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm very, well, and I guess the finality of the story is that my aunt died at 51.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And so, it was quite a loss. And so that has made my life I'm very committed to balance, very committed to, as much as I can, obviously with a music career as well, but I try not to work weekends, and I try not to work evenings, and she's a lot of the inspiration behind that. And of course, I've worked for many women entrepreneurs along the way, lots of artists. I've taken a lot of online programs, obviously Maurice Forleo's B School. I'm currently being mentored by Amber McHugh. So I'm really enjoying that. One of the things I've been searching out in my mentors is people who have very different skill sets to mine, but who aren't pushy. Right? Because I'm a total people pleaser, Holly. I am a total people pleaser. And that works so great when you have a coach, because I just be like, look, can I get a gold star for what I just did? Look at all the stuff I did. But if I have somebody who won't encourage me to listen to my own gut, that will just derail my company and myself. So I try and work. So Amber is somebody, and she's got a real good knowledge of operations and systems, and that is just not my forte. And so, but it's essential for growing my business. So I've chosen her, but she's obviously, her brand is called Nice Ops. So she's not pushing. She's not pushing. So I really like that.
That's important.
Yeah, totally.
Excellent. So Farideh, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell us where people can find you online so they can check you out?
Well, they can go to Farideh.ca, which is a very weird spelling, but if they go to your site and look into the notes, they can see it's they can see Farideh.ca is where they can find all the information. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. And can you also give us the URL for your 30-day launch plan checklist?
Sure.
Calendar?
Yeah, it's launchyourcourse.com.
Excellent. So thank you again so much. I really, really love chatting with you about launches.
Yeah, this is so great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you for listening. And remember to visit sociallyholistic.com/SHP75 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Socially Holistic Podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. Please help us help more women in business by giving us a 5-star review of this podcast. The more women who find out about this podcast, the more successful businesses there will be. So please leave a 5-star review today over at iTunes. Thank you.